Hi, this is Stuart Talley. I'm here today to do a video to talk about lead in schools. And specifically, I'm talking about lead in the drinking water in schools. It is an enormous problem that many school districts have been ignoring for many, many years. Back in 1998, the EPA came out with guidance for every school district in the country and advised school districts around the country that one of the big issues right now with lead contamination was old pipes in schools. And any school that was built before 1980 potentially had lead in the pipes that was potentially leaching into the water supply at the school. And so they advised all of the schools around the country to do testing. It's relatively inexpensive testing that can be done on water, drinking fountains, cafeteria, water sources to determine if there's lead in the water. And it's critical because any amount of lead in water is potentially dangerous to children. And I'm talking about even very, very small numbers. Can be dangerous to children, can impact their learning, can cause learning disabilities, can cause all kinds of health issues as children develop over time. So it's a very, very serious issue. For some reason, school districts ignored the warnings. Almost no school districts did testing and reported their test results back to the EPA because they didn't have to. It was a voluntary program. It's not until recently that schools have started testing water. And in 2018, California passed a law that required water districts to go test drinking fountains and water sources at every school in the state. And the results were recently released, and there's a spreadsheet that's available that has the results for the testing that was done at all the California schools. And you could search these test results by school and find out if your school has a lead in the drinking water problem. The results that came out were shocking. Of the schools that were tested, there were over 2,000 positive test results. And this means that there were 2,000 water sources at various schools all over the state that had levels of lead detected in water at drinking fountains. And that is very, very concerning. But what is really concerning is the way this testing was done. So I think the problem is probably much, much worse than what's being reported. And there's a couple things to understand. When you have lead in the pipes at a school, it doesn't mean that every source of water will have contamination. What you can have is one drinking fountain might have lead solder right underneath it where it enters, where the water enters the school. And you can have another drinking fountain down the hallway that doesn't have the same lead in the pipe or solder in the pipe. So what can happen is you can have one drinking fountain can have extremely high levels of lead, and another one down the hall might show no levels of lead. So it's very important, and the EPA told the schools this back in 1999. They told them you need to test all of the water sources at your school. When California passed its law, the law only required schools to test 3 sources. So almost all of the results that we have from the schools around the country, there's only 3 sources of water that are tested. The other problem with the testing that was done in California is the results that are reported and made public only report levels that are above 5 parts per billion. And parts per billion is how they measure the amount of lead in water. And anything over 0 is potentially harmful to children. Anything over 0. What the results show are thousands of drinking fountains that were tested, and the result just says less than 5 parts per billion. So we have no way of knowing how many of those drinking fountains have lead in them that are at levels between 0 and 5. So that's a big problem. The other problem that we have discovered is that school districts, when they get these results, are confusing standards with respect to whether they should do anything about the results. And there is confusion out there because under the Safe Drinking Water Act, there are rules that regulate water districts, the people that supply the water to the school. They have to test their water. And if levels in their water going into the school is over 15 parts per billion, the water district has to immediately do things. They have to notify parents, they have to institute anti-corrosion controls. That doesn't mean that anything less than 15 parts per billion is safe. It doesn't. So what a lot of school districts have done is they might have a drinking fountain that has levels at 10 parts per billion, but they don't do anything about it because they're looking at that 15 part per billion standard that really has nothing to do with health, especially the health of children. So a couple of things. If I had a child in school today, what I would do, and I knew the school was built before the 80s, I would go online, I would test or check the results, check the spreadsheet and see if the school had problems. If any drinking fountain tested at any level over 5 parts per billion, that's all you can tell, I would talk to the school and find out what they're doing about it or what they did do about it, if anything, because it's really important that the school district take action to eliminate lead. The EPA, school districts have done a very good job of eliminating one of the biggest sources of lead, which is lead in paint. And children were often exposed to lead in paint. The problem is they haven't done anything about the water. So if you have an issue with your school or school district, not really taking care of a situation where there's lead in the water, we're here to help. You can call us. You can fill out one of our online forms. We'll get back to you to talk to you about the situation. There's various claims you can bring. If your child has any kind of learning issues or developmental disabilities that can be linked to the lead in the water, there's a potential claim. There is also the potential to bring what we call claims for injunctive relief, where we can actually force the school to get rid of the lead in the water if they're not willing to do it voluntarily. So please feel free to call us if you have any questions or concerns. Like I said, you could reach us at the phone number on our website or fill out one of our online forms and a lawyer will call you right back.